Welcome to American National Government. In this course, you will discuss the purpose, structure, and evolution of United States government.
I'm Jordan O'Connell, History and Government Instructor at Northeast Iowa Community College. This lecture distills a decade of my written notes taken from American Government, Roots and Reform, American Government by Lenz and Holman, and our course-assigned OpenStax American Government textbook. This lecture focuses on rulemaking, adjudication, and the fourth branch. The core question is this: who really governs when unelected agencies write rules, adjudicate disputes, and enforce policy long after Congress has moved on to the next headline? The core competency is to describe how the federal bureaucracy carries out the responsibilities of the federal government. Who really governs when unelected agencies write rules, adjudicate disputes, and enforce policy long after Congress has moved on to the next headline? The fight moves through civil service rules, notice and comment dockets, agency adjudication, guidance documents, and court review of administrative records. A restaurant owner receives an inspection notice, a contractor needs a permit, a retiree appeals a benefits denial. A farmer disputes an environmental finding, a worker files a safety complaint, a family waits on a financial aid determination. In each case, the citizen does not meet Congress first. The citizen meets an agency. That encounter is where American government becomes concrete. The agency explains what papers must be filed, what deadlines apply, what counts as compliance, what violation triggers a penalty, and which hearing process can review the outcome. That is why calling the bureaucracy a mere support system misses the point. The bureaucracy functions as the government's working face. Congress writes the outer frame, presidents announce priorities, and agencies write the operating rules that have the force of law in ordinary life. They inspect, license, deny, approve, penalize, and adjudicate. The real friction of government often arrives through forms, findings, notices, hearings, and enforcement letters rather than through floor speeches or campaign slogans. The bureaucracy acts like a fourth branch because it combines functions that the Constitution separates formally. Agencies implement statutes, but they also write rules in delegated areas and decide disputes through administrative adjudication. A citizen may therefore encounter something that looks partly legislative, partly executive, and partly judicial inside the same agency structure. That arrangement makes modern policy possible. It also creates a recurring legitimacy problem because unelected officials wield public power through technical processes that many citizens barely see until the process lands on them directly. The civic problem is not whether government needs administration, it plainly does. The problem is whether a democratic republic can rely on a bureaucracy that writes detailed obligations and decides thousands of disputes without letting that machinery outrun public accountability. The early national government was small by modern standards, but even early administrations needed clerks, tax collectors, customs officers, and land officials. As the country industrialized, urbanized, and regulated more aspects of social and economic life, the demand for permanent administration grew. Congress could pass tariff laws, banking laws, food laws, labor laws, environmental laws, and welfare statutes, but Congress could not personally inspect mines, test drugs, manage retirement claims, or review each contested penalty. The spoils system initially tied many public jobs to party loyalty. Victorious parties distributed offices to supporters, which linked elections to staffing, but also linked staffing to incompetence and corruption. The assassination of James Garfield by a disappointed office seeker sharpened reform pressure, and the Pendleton Civil Service Act of 1883 shifted federal employment toward merit and examinations. That shift did not remove politics from administration, but it changed the underlying personnel logic. A professional civil service gave the state continuity across elections. Professionalization solved one problem and intensified another. Once agencies housed expertise, Congress had reason to delegate more detail. Lawmakers wrote broader statutes and expected departments, commissions, and independent agencies to supply technical content. Congress did not do this out of laziness alone. Many policy areas require sustained expertise. Securities regulation, nuclear safety, food inspection, aviation standards, disability review, and workplace safety all demand more than broad legislative aspiration. Still, delegated authority means agencies often decide what the law requires in settings Congress never described line by line. The Administrative Procedure Act of 1946 became a key organizing framework for this world. It established procedures for rulemaking and adjudication, required notice for many proposed rules, allowed public comment, and created standards for judicial review. That statute did not end disputes about bureaucracy. It acknowledged that bureaucracy had become permanent enough to require its own due process architecture. Once Congress accepted that agencies would make consequential decisions, Congress also needed procedures that forced agencies to explain themselves. The Federal Register turned that duty into a visible paper trail. Proposed rules appear there, final rules appear there, and regulated parties learn from it when an agency intends to change obligations. For a citizen without time or counsel, that paper trail can feel remote. For lawyers, trade groups, states, unions, and advocacy organizations, it is the battlefield where administrative detail becomes negotiable. The bureaucracy, therefore, does not operate only through hidden offices. It also operates through publication requirements that still favor actors able to monitor dense text on a regular basis. Alternatives existed. Congress could have tried to legislate with far more detail and far fewer delegated gaps. Presidents could have relied more heavily on temporary commissions. Courts could have absorbed more of the dispute resolution burden. None of those alternatives scaled well to a continental administrative state with complex markets, massive benefit programs, and national security responsibilities. So the federal government chose permanent agencies staffed by civil servants, specialists, attorneys, inspectors, and administrative law judges. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Congress had already chosen the main administrative instruments that made later conflict inevitable: the Interstate Commerce Commission, the Federal Trade Commission, the Food and Drug Administration, the Securities and Exchange Commission, the National Labor Relations Board, and dozens of later agencies, all rested on the same governing assumption. Congress would announce goals, create offices, and then rely on permanent administrators to translate broad commands into daily rules, hearings, and enforcement decisions. The argument was never about whether paperwork existed. The argument was about who would write the operative details and how a citizen could fight back once those details carried legal force. Start with rulemaking. Congress passes a statute that orders cleaner air, safer workplaces, more reliable consumer disclosure, or more orderly financial reporting. The agency then must answer questions Congress left open. Which emissions thresholds count as violation? Which reporting forms satisfy the statute? How often must firms test? Which exemptions apply? What deadlines can regulated parties meet without collapsing the program? Agency staff draft proposed rules, publish them in the Federal Register, collect comments, revise text, and justify the final rule against statutory language, evidence, and expected challenge. That process is not decorative. Rulemaking decides the burden citizens and businesses actually carry. A single definition can change who must comply. A single reporting timeline can determine whether a small firm can stay solvent while meeting the rule. A single enforcement carve-out can decide whether an agency punishes first offenses or focuses on repeat violators. People often say Congress passed a law requiring something. In practice, the agency's final rule usually decides the lived meaning of that requirement. Now turn to adjudication. Agencies do not only write rules, they also decide whether particular people and organizations complied with those rules or qualify for benefits. Social Security disability cases, immigration proceedings, labor disputes, securities penalties, veteran claims, licensing contests, and Medicare reimbursement fights often move through administrative hearings before they ever reach federal court. Administrative law judges and hearing officers examine records, testimony, and regulatory standards, then issue decisions that can alter income, liberty, employment, or legal status. Inspection and enforcement create another layer of pressure. OSHA inspectors visit workplaces. EPA investigators examine environmental compliance. FDA officials review food and drug safety. IRS employees audit returns. Agencies can demand records, assess fines, suspend licenses, or refer cases for stronger enforcement. Citizens meet government here not as theory, but as a deadline, a penalty notice, a corrective action plan, or a required filing. Adjudication does not end with the first decision either. Many agencies provide internal appeals, review boards, or reconsideration channels before a federal court ever sees the case. That structure can improve consistency because specialist reviewers know the program better than a generalist judge. It can also exhaust ordinary people who must navigate layered timelines, paperwork demands, and legal vocabulary while the agency keeps its institutional footing the entire time. Administrative justice often turns on endurance as much as on abstract right. Civil service structure carries force because this machinery cannot reset every election. Career employees hold institutional memory, technical skill, and procedural continuity. Political appointees still count. They choose priorities, interpret presidential direction, and often decide how aggressively to use agency discretion. But the day-to-day machine runs through career staff who know the files, systems, deadlines, and governing rules. That fact makes the bureaucracy durable. It also makes it hard for any president to control every administrative output personally. When civil service reformers pushed the Pendleton Act through Congress in 1883, they were writing against the spoils system in the shadow of James Garfield's assassination. Merit language was not decorative, it was a direct answer to a patronage order in which office holding could hinge on party service rather than competence. Examinations, classified positions, and protected tenure were written into law because reformers wanted permits, pensions, customs collections, and enforcement decisions to depend less on who had done campaign work for the winning side. That victory created a second fight immediately. A merit official still exercises power over citizens who did not elect that official. The stronger the civil service grows, the more durable administration becomes across changing political moods. That durability can protect lawful government from partisan purges, but it can also harden policy continuity against election results. The argument over professionalism has therefore always carried two claims at once. Expertise prevents corruption, and expertise can insulate coercive authority from direct democratic turnover. The Administrative Procedure Act of 1946 put another set of weapons on the table. Notice, comment, record building, and judicial review requirements forced agencies to explain themselves in writing before rules took hold. Yet those procedures also favored organized actors with counsel, time, and technical literacy. A national trade association can flood a docket with economic analysis, scientific studies, and redrafted text. An ordinary citizen usually cannot. The statute opened a door and then made effective use of that door unequal. Administrative adjudication sharpened the pressure further. Congress and the courts accepted internal hearings because federal judges could not absorb every benefits dispute, labor complaint, securities penalty, immigration case, or licensing fight in the first instance. That choice delivered scale and specialization. It also placed citizens before hearing officers inside the same administrative structure that wrote the rule and launched the enforcement action. The phrase due process still has to survive that institutional setting every time an agency says it can both regulate and judge. The fourth branch label has force because it describes a real constitutional discomfort. Congress creates and funds agencies. Presidents direct much of their work. Courts review pieces of the record after the fact. Agencies themselves draft rules, apply standards, investigate conduct, and decide disputes. Modern democracy depends on those blended capacities, and that dependence never fully settles who should control them once expertise, procedure, and coercion sit in the same office. Citizens who want government to protect food safety, regulate air travel, issue retirement checks, police financial fraud, inspect workplaces, secure borders, and respond to disasters are asking for a functioning bureaucracy, whether they use that word or not. Agencies make national policy legible and enforceable. Without them, statutes would remain slogans and campaign speeches would remain theater. The bureaucracy is therefore not an optional appendage. It is the method through which much of the federal state reaches the public. Red tape is an incomplete explanation. Some paperwork protects due process, records discretion, and creates reviewable evidence. Some paperwork exists because Congress wrote vague goals and expected agencies to solve the resulting complexity downstream. Some paperwork reflects agency caution after courts punish sloppy reasoning. When citizens complain about forms, delays, and permit burdens, they are often feeling the accumulated result of statutes, judicial doctrine, risk management, and political blame avoidance all at once. That practical case does not settle the legitimacy question. Rulemaking can drift from statutory purpose. Adjudication can feel remote and slow. Compliance burdens can crush small actors who lack counsel or time. Political appointees can bend agencies toward ideological goals. Career employees can become risk-averse and procedural to the point of paralysis. Citizens can therefore experience the same agency as protective in one context and punitive in another. Two lazy positions deserve rejection. The first says bureaucracy is unelected tyranny. That claim ignores how impossible modern governance would be without administration. The second says expertise alone justifies whatever agencies do. That claim ignores how coercive even technical administration can become when citizens face permits, denials, inspections, or fines. Agencies need enough discretion to make statutes real and enough supervision, transparency, and review to keep discretion from turning into insulated domination. The unresolved judgment remains severe. In a democracy, who should write the rules that citizens actually obey in daily life? Elected lawmakers who lack technical time, presidents who need speed and control, or agencies whose expertise makes government workable but whose power lands hardest on people who never voted for the rule writer? That question is where modern government stops looking abstract and starts demanding adult civic attention. The unresolved question is whether expert administration can remain democratic when the people most affected meet the state through rules they never voted on.
If you're curious how I'm using AI to build these lectures and reshape higher education, Visit thelibertytolearn.com. I'll see you in class.